And another season of New York Giants football is wrapped up. Season 1, we did not do so well. We finished the season 8-7-1. Did not make the playoffs. Finished year 2, 10-6. Also did not make the playoffs because 10-6 was one of those years where everybody was good and 10-6 was not good enough to make the playoffs. But we did improve, and we went into season 3 knowing that we are a good team. We improved even more in the offseason, knowing that we could do something in season 3. So season 3 rolls around, get off to a hot start. And the Giants are teams that usually get off the hot starts. That's just how they've been. Their problem has been finishing. Mike Francesa talked about this on his show.
You know, I was thinking this last night. I was watching the post-game stuff last night. We went into this season, once we had everything settled as far as the negotiations between owners and players went. We went into this season, and we were at camp in August. And the only word anybody wanted to use at camp was finish. The Giants were going to finish.
And Mike is right. The Giants came into camp wanting to finish the season because they've never been able to finish seasons. That's what they've had trouble with in the past few years, and really in their history, is they start out fast and they finish slow, and they end up missing the playoffs, or they're not hot going into the playoffs, and they just get derailed. But this year, they started off hot, kind of slid down a bit after that undefeated start they had. They lost 3 in a row. Then they won, lost another, and they lost 4 games. But after they lost that 4th game, they did not lose a single one. They haven't lost since week 11. And they carried that all the way through the playoffs. Did not allow a touchdown to the Seahawks. Did not allow a touchdown to the Niners. Only allowed 2 touchdowns to the Buccaneers and outscored them because Donnie Chapman decided he wanted to throw a shootout that game. In the Super Bowl, shut out the 15-1 Baltimore Ravens. And they're Super Bowl champs. Now the Giants, it's really all about getting hot. You have to get hot at the right time. Mike Francesa talked about that too.
In this sport now, you have to get hot, and the ball's got to bounce right, because there's no difference between these teams. Very little difference between these teams. You're telling me that San Francisco or New Orleans or Baltimore couldn't be standing there today? They could.
And he's right, because you need to get hot at the right time, because all these teams, like he said, are even. They're all great teams. Could have been any of those teams listed. Could have been Baltimore. Could have been New Orleans. Could have been any of those teams in the Super Bowl. But in the end, it was the New York Football Giants coming out on top in Super Bowl 51. And because of that, head coach Tony D'Amato, the man who replaced Tom Coughlin, has been extended his contract for 3 more years, so Tony D'Amato, the Italian, is in New York for even longer. As far as how the team did this season, Donnie Chapman, his first full year as a starter, his rookie year, he kind of flip-flopped. They started Nassib at the start, went with Chapman, he struggled, they went back with Nassib. But then season 3, they were committed to him, and he got the job done in the end. Didn't have the greatest of stats, only completed about 50% of his passes, which needs to be improved drastically. He threw for 3,556 yards, which that's pretty good. It could be a little bit better, it could be worse though, so there's no complaining with those yards. Threw 19 touchdowns, 17 picks isn't exactly something you want to see, but it's not bad either. Kean Hightower on the run game was the workhorse all season. Ran for 1,678 yards, 12 touchdowns. He did have 5 fumbles, but he was the workhorse. He had some fumble issues. He got rid of those fumble issues when he got to the end of the season, especially the playoffs. And he carried them to the playoffs on offense. He was their workhorse all season long. He got over 100 yards in countless games. Even Niall Davis got some work on the ground. Niall Davis had 5 touchdowns on the ground. Chapman had 3 touchdowns on the ground. Andre Williams had 5 carries all season long and had 2 touchdowns. And then something that's always been a struggle ever since D'Amato's taken over for these Giants is the receiving game, the passing game in general, is they can't get their receivers the ball. When they do, they get it to one guy and they can't spread it around. This year, OBJ and Cobb both had great seasons. Odell Beckham Jr., 61 receptions, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Randall Cobb, 1 more reception in 62, 863 yards, 5 touchdowns. Even Garrett Graham picked things up towards the end of the season, and in the playoffs, Chapman was getting him. He had the hot hand, and he was getting it to him. Garrett Graham, 28 receptions, 500 yards, 2 touchdowns in the regular season. Then on the defensive side of the ball, which was the #1 defensive unit in the NFL this season, there wasn't a single unit better than the New York Giants. Paul Warlow led that team with 89 tackles, 4 sacks. Second was Donta Hightower, 79 tackles, 6 sacks. And this linebacker unit and this front 7 in general is amazing. They are nasty. They get to the rush. They get to the quarterback. They rush the passer. They do not allow anything. They have no mercy for the offense, the opposing offense, and they show that all season long. Bernard Anderson, 25 sacks. The guy's an absolute monster. 25 sacks, got snubbed on Offensive Player of the Year. He did win Super Bowl MVP, led the NFL in sacks. He had 20 sacks in his rookie season. He goes from undrafted rookie at a Harvard to superstar left end in the NFL. If that's not a Cinderella story, I don't know what is. And then around the league, we had a few people to congratulate. Mike Glennon winning his back-to-back MVP award. Let's not take away too much from his back-to-back, but I mean, Joe Flacco did throw just for a little bit less yards, and he threw 40 touchdowns, less picks, and a higher completion percentage. I would have gave it to Flacco, but when you have an opportunity to give it a guy back-to-back MVPs, why not give it to him? So Mike Glennon, back-to-back MVPs, and he's a big reason why the Bucs are so good. And the rushing game, only Jamal Charles had more rushing yards on the season than our very own Kean Hightower, the second-year running back out of the Texas Longhorns. Like I said, fumble issues early in his career, but he leveled them out this year, and he was able to pick them up and carry this team throughout the season on offense. Then, on defensive side of the ball, we have 190 tackles from Luke Kuechly. 190 tackles on the season. That is absolutely ridiculous. If you're playing the Carolina Panthers, you're going to get tackled by Luke Kuechly. It doesn't matter who you are, because he had 190 tackles on the season. That's absolutely ridiculous. Didn't have a single sack. But you don't need to have a single sack when you have 190 tackles. That is absolutely insane. And then one of the downers around the league was in the same stadium, MetLife Stadium, the other team that plays here, the New York Jets. Geno Smith is no longer their quarterback. They have Alex Smith, the former Kansas City Chief, the former San Francisco 49er, the former first overall pick from the Utah Utes, threw 39 interceptions. He threw 25 touchdown passes, but he threw 39 interceptions. 39 interceptions, that's one away from 40. He needs to cut down those if the Jets have any chance of being a playoff team in the future. And as far as players around the league who have retired, the great Tom Brady has retired. No more Tom Brady. The New England Patriots are going to have to use whoever they have in the works, draft somebody, whatever they're going to do, somebody's having to replace Tom Brady. Last season, Peyton Manning retired, and he was replaced by Zach Dysert, who finished 4th in the MVP voting. That's a pretty drastic change from going from Peyton Manning to Zach Dysert and being just as good. And the New York Giants went into this offseason wanting to re-sign a lot of people. They had a lot of guys who were on one-year deals who really helped the team. One of them being Bernard Anderson, the superstar left end. The leader of this defense, Bernard Anderson. He got paid 6 years, $51 million over 6 years. If you ask me, that's a steal. The guy is absolutely worth every penny of that. He's the leader on the defense. He's the best player on the team, arguably. And he's with the New York Giants for another 6 years. Paul Warlow, the linebacker, led the team in tackles. He's also leader on the defense. 5 years, $33 million over 5 years. Then we've got John Hankins, defensive tackle, who's going to be taking over the #1 spot for Cullen Jenkins because Cullen Jenkins is too old and they did not re-sign him. So, John Hankins, $21.2 million over 4 years. John Beeson. Now, he's going to come back, but he's getting up there in age. They do have some plans. They wanted to go into free agency. Signing someone, we'll get onto that a little bit later. But first, they did re-sign John Beeson, who will be playing left outside linebacker to 2 years, $7.5 million. Now, he'll be around for 2 years, might retire at the end of that, might not. But all that really matters is that John Beeson is getting up there in age, and they do have a contingency plan. Then they did re-sign Garrett Graham, who, like I said, stepped up in playoffs in the last few weeks of the season. He's not the long-term solution at playoffs. I'd like to see them go in the draft at tight end. But as of right now, Garrett Graham is the tight end, the starting tight end. They're committed to him, the boy from Brick, New Jersey. So free agency rolls around, and the Giants don't really make some big splash moves. They don't sign guys who you would like jump out at you. There was guys like Tyrann Mathieu available, Jason Witten was available. You had all kinds of superstar players available, but they didn't go after any of those superstars. What they did do was they let Ryan Nassib walk. He's probably going to get a starting job somewhere. He's capable of starting a lot of places in the NFL. Who knows? He might even end up in New York playing for the Jets. Sure, he could do better than that 39 interceptions Alex Smith. With that being said, they did go out and sign a few people. One of them being a new backup quarterback in Christian Ponder, former first-round pick by the Minnesota Vikings. He's the backup for Donnie Chapman now. Then they also went out and signed Terrence Cody, the former Alabama Crimson Tide defensive tackle. He'll be as probably one of the third or fourth string defensive tackles. Just a guy to put some depth there at the position, just in case there's an injury, because this is football, and let's be honest, there are injuries in football. So he got signed to 2 years, $1.8 mil. Ponder is also 2 years, $3.25 mil. Then, kind of a contingency plan for the starting left guard, Jeff Schwartz, who's getting up there in age. If he gets injured, you got to have a guy to back him up. And he's getting up there in age, so we're going to need to replace him eventually. So the Giants went out and they signed Axel Umodu, who was on the team last season, but they let him walk. They didn't let him walk after the re-sign phase. He wanted to test free agency, see the kind of deal he could get. And the Giants just thought he was too valuable to let him walk. The former Miami University Hurricane is coming back to the New York Giants. He'll be the starting left guard in the future. He will be. Then, we've got Steve Beauharness. Steve Beauharness is the contingency plan for the Giants at the left outside linebacker position. He's born and raised in the New York, New Jersey area, went to Rutgers University. He was a leader on the defense there, got brought into the league by Bill Belichick on the Patriots, because, Patriots loved Rutgers players. And now he's a New York Giant where he belongs, back in the New York, New Jersey area. And he's the contingency plan at the left outside linebacker position. Then, Steve Weatherford. He wanted to test free agency, see what kind of deal he could get. Well, the only offer he got was from the New York Giants, so he came back. Now, the NFL draft. This was an interesting time because you got guys on the team who are aging. You're going to need to replace eventually, but nobody right now needs to be replaced. The Giants don't have any needs on their offense anywhere that needs to be replaced right now. So unlike season 1 where you had guys like Chapman and Hightower and all these guys being drafted that came in and stepped in right away, you don't have the need for that right now. You're going to have some needs and within maybe later in the season for some injuries, some depth moves, and then in future seasons. So the first thing, Garrett Graham, like I said, is not the future plan at tight end. So first round, Giants went. Last pick of the first round, Dion Green, tight end out of LSU. So he'll be there to back up Garrett Graham, maybe get some snaps, 2 tight end formation, single back, stuff like that. Second round pick, a running back to back up Keon Hightower, to take the workload off him. You don't want a guy like him getting 36 plus carries every single game. You want to take the workload off of him, maybe give him about 10 carries, maybe 8 carries to this second round pick, Lawrence Rock, running back out of Memphis. Take the workload off him, especially since Rashad Jennings got too slow last season to play, and he retired after this season. Third round pick, defensive tackle out of The Ohio State University, Jordan Vasquez. He'll most likely be, once again, a third, fourth string defensive tackle, maybe a second string if he beats out a guy in camp, depending on what happens in camp, if they sign somebody, veteran type player. But as of right now, it's looking like he'll be a third, fourth guy on the depth chart. Like I said, depth is a key because there are injuries in the NFL. Fourth round pick, cornerback out of Minnesota, the former Golden Gopher Anton Berry. Speedy corner, good man-to-man, not very good in zone. He's more of like a prototype player who can keep up with you. There's worries about his just coverage issues and just DB skills in general. Then fifth round pick, another running back, just in case Lawrence Rock doesn't turn out, or you can always have 3 running backs for depth. Once again, depth is an issue. So, running back Jesse Knox out of Wisconsin. Sixth round pick, Matt McCarmichael, middle linebacker, Michigan State. Now, once you get past Paul Warlow, you don't really have any middle linebackers to take the place past Paul Warlow. So if he doesn't get injured, you need to put him in. Maybe in the future. Matt Carmichael is the guy there, Michigan State middle linebacker. Then, 2 7th round picks. We had a 7th round pick that we acquired from the St. Louis Rams in a trade in the previous season. We got a left tackle out of FSU, Christian Marsh. A big guy, 6'6", over 300 pounds. He'll be able to fill a spot in the either backup left tackle or the backup right tackle position. I think they're going to move in the right tackle, if I had to guess, but I'm not the coach after all. 7th round, last pick of the 7th round, last pick of the NFL draft is a kicker who will be the starting kicker for the New York Giants unless something happens in the offseason, something happens in the preseason, something happens in camp. This guy will be the starting kicker, as far as I know, for the New York Giants. That is Clint Ramsey, kicker out of Arkansas State. So the preseason rolls around and guys slip through the cracks. They really do. Guys slip through the cracks every season. There are gems just sitting there without a team at the beginning of the preseason every year. And the Giants hopped on top of it this year. Last year they got Paul Warlow, who turned to be a stud, and now he got paid. That's how they got Bernard Anderson the first year. But now, they're going to get a number 2 defensive tackle to back up John Hankins in Sharif Floyd, the former Florida Gator. Solid guy to be number 2. Keep our front 7 as that deadly front 7 it can be. He can get to the passer a few times, stop the run. He's a good pickup. Then, just to make our secondary even more deadly, Brandon Boykin is no longer going to be the nickel corner. He's going to be the dime corner. The nickel corner is now going to be Logan Ryan, former New England Patriot, former Rutgers Scarlet Knight. So he's from the New York, New Jersey area, and he's going to play in the New York, New Jersey area for the New York Giants. He's going to be our nickel corner, and we'll have a top 3 corners of Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Prince Amukamara, and Logan Ryan. That's pretty good if you ask me. LOB in Seattle, LOB in New York. And with that being said, that'll wrap things up for the offseason of the end of Season 3. We'll see you in Season 4, ladies and gentlemen. I've been your host, JerseyBorn, and I'm saying goodbye.
With the Sultans, with the